Welcome everyone to the Cognitive Science Orientation. My name's John Vervaeke. I am the director of the Cognitive Science program. This is your opportunity to meet many of the people that are going to be guiding you through this program, whether they're faculty or administration, and to give you some introduction to the overall structure of the program, some of the intent and the content, and also to give you a chance to ask questions. So as I mentioned, this is for cognitive science. Cognitive science is a program that is a major that is designed to be paired with another major. So cognitive science is the interdisciplinary study of cognition. I'll get into that a little bit in a few minutes. But basically, there are four what are called home disciplines or core disciplines: linguistics, philosophy, computer science, and psychology. And what you're going to do typically, although you don't have to, but typically what people do is they pair cognitive science with one of those core four. So cognitive science and psych, cognitive science and philosophy, and we'll have faculty that represent each one of these linkages speaking. I will speak on behalf of cognitive science and psychology because I am in cognitive science and also appointed in psychology. So there are 5 streams that you can enter when you enter into cognitive science. 3 of them are art streams, 2 of them are science. The art streams are language and cognition, putting an emphasis, of course, on language and its relationship to thinking, reasoning, etc. Perception and attention, which is pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. Thinking and reasoning, this has a lot more to do with intelligence, problem solving, reasoning, etc. This is an area that I do quite a bit of my work in. Next are the 2 science streams, so you'll come out of these with a BSc rather than a BA. And the 2 are cognition and the brain and the computational cognition stream. As you can imagine, that stream is often paired with computer science. Thinking and reasoning tends to get paired with psychology, etc. There are 2 basic ways, many of you already know this, but just to review, to get into the cognitive science program. One is you take the introductory course, Cog 250, which is entitled In the Introduction to Cognitive Science. It's a full year course. I teach that course. I'll give you a bit about that in a couple of minutes. The other way you can get in is by taking 1.5, 1.5 full course equivalents. And again, in those 4 home disciplines, in computer science, linguistics, philosophy, and psychology, but you're not allowed to get more than 1 credit in any one of those 4. So you're going to have to have at least 1 pairing in order to get into cognitive science that way. So as I mentioned, there are 4 standard pairings. People also tend to pair cognitive science with neuroscience, and I've noticed in the past few years that the pairing with cognitive science and biology is also growing in popularity. So a little bit about me. I've been teaching here since 1994, and I've been involved with this program right from the very beginning. I am an associate professor in the teaching stream, and as I mentioned, I'm the director of the CogSci program. It's a very powerful thing to pair cognitive science and psychology. That's what I'm going to talk about, and I will let my colleagues talk about the other pairings. Psychology is very good for an analysis of what we mean by the word mind, by doing the experimental investigation of behavior and what that can teach us about the nature of the mind. And of course, psychology is quite varied. Typically, people that go into cognitive science and psychology do cognitive psychology and cognitive science. And if you do that, you'll be taking most of those cognitive psychology courses with me, since I teach several of them. I teach the course on cognitive development, the course entitled Thinking and Reasoning, the course on higher cognitive processes, a higher level course on the nature and function of the self, and sometimes I teach Intro to Psych. The main course I teach right now for the CogSci program is, as I mentioned, Cog 250. Right now, I have a reduced teaching load because I'm the director. I also, in future years, you might see me teaching Cog 402, which is an upper level course on neuroscientific theories of consciousness. So what goes on in COG 250? Well, you'll get an introduction to these areas, psychology, linguistics, philosophy, computer science, but you'll get much more. As I mentioned, when you think about this term that you've heard me use several times, mind and relatedly cognition, what is it we're talking about? What is it we're referring to? The problem we face right now is this is a very equivocal term. It has many meanings, and therefore we can get confused, we can speak equivocally, we can get caught up in ambiguity, we can conflate things. So for example, you might, when you hear the word mind, you might be thinking like a neuroscientist, and you think of neurons, and you think of neural networks and patterns of behavior, and you'll use fMRIs and other investigation methods. But then when you move to something like computer science, especially artificial intelligence and machine learning, you'll hear a very different word when you hear mind or perhaps intelligence. Now you'll hear perhaps programs and algorithms, and you'll think maybe about deep learning, which is in the news a lot, and you'll be running simulations. So notice that neuroscience and computer science talk about different entities. They use different methods of gathering information, of making a case. And then, of course, you'd move to perhaps, you might think of it as a psychologist, like myself might. And now, again, what you're doing is you're not thinking about algorithms as much or brains as much, although you might talk about those. You're thinking about things like long-term memory versus working memory. What's the nature of attention? How does it relate to consciousness? Things like that. And now what you're going to do is you're going to run experiments on human beings, and you're going to run statistics on that. So again, you seem to be talking about different entities, and you're gathering your evidence in different ways, and you're making your case in a different way. And then, of course, when you hear mind, one of the things you should be paying attention to is what's happening right now. I'm making noises come out of my face hole, and you're having thoughts in your mind. And what is more revealing of one person's cognition to another than language? And so when you hear mind, you might quite rightly think, oh, to understand mind is to study language, at least the human mind, I've got to study language. And you'd be right. And then you'd study linguistics, and then you wouldn't be talking so much about working memory or neural networks or particular neuronal anatomy or anything like that. Now you might be talking about the lexicon, you might be talking about sentence structure, you might be talking about acquisition rules, you might be talking about historical developments of language. These are all things that you'd be studying. And again, different language, different entities, different ways of gathering evidence. So what cognitive science, in fact, is what I argue in COG 250, what cognitive science does is try to get these different disciplines, they're almost like different countries speaking their own language, tries to get these different disciplines to talk to each other in a more regular and reliable and perhaps diplomatic manner so that they can insightfully transform, inform, and constrain each other. Because here's the idea, we want to avoid all that equivocation, because equivocation leads to very faulty reasoning. It leads you to not properly control your variables. And the other thing is, these disciplines, if they're isolated from each other, think about what that means in terms of the mind as an entity. Because here's what I'm going to propose to you, that it's highly unlikely that these levels that I've talked about, the brain level, the computational information processing level, the behavioral level, the linguistic level, and perhaps even beyond that, the cultural level, it's highly unlikely that these are causally isolated from each other. It's much more plausible that they interact, they affect each other. So the degree to which the disciplines aren't talking to each other is the degree to which we aren't tracing out those important connections between all these levels of mind. And so in COG 250 and in the cognitive science program in general, what you're going to learn is you're going to use philosophy, which sounds, what, philosophy? Isn't that, nobody does philosophy anymore, do they? Yeah, philosophy is actually very important, because philosophy is all about building new conceptual vocabularies, new theoretical grammars, so that these different disciplines with their different discourses and their different ontologies and their different methodologies can all talk to each other in a way that is useful, insightful, clarifying, and has the chance to reveal these important causal connections between all these different levels of the mind. So I think, and I'm highly prejudiced and biased, and if you take one of my courses, you'll learn about bias, but I think cognitive science is one of the most important disciplines facing us right now. Human beings we're at a very pivotal point in many ways, and what we need more perhaps than ever before is we need a kind of wisdom that is born out of a profound self-knowledge. I don't mean your own personal self-knowledge, although that might be relevant. I'm talking about a deeper understanding of what human beings are and how they make meaning and how they do such a thing as science. It's a bit of a shock when you realize that the scientific worldview does not have a proper account of this entity we call science, or of the scientists, or what those scientists are doing with their minds when they make science. This is a huge gap, a hole in our worldview. And it's putting stress on our culture, I would argue, in important ways. Cognitive science is a discipline that is explicitly directed towards trying to alleviate that challenge, fill in that gap, and give us the kind of profound self-knowledge and how we fit into reality that we're going to need to confront the 21st century. So I hope that's inspired you a little bit. I have found, as I said, I've been involved. I mean, I was doing cognitive science before I started teaching here, so I've been involved with cognitive science basically since 1990. And my passion for it has not waned. It has only grown. And it has been my great pleasure to come to know my colleagues in this program, who you're going to meet, and the amazing administrators. Again, I'm biased, but I think the administrators for the CogSci program are some of the best I've ever got to work with, both within UFT and outside of UFT. So that's what you have to look forward to in your career of cognitive science. And I'm now going to turn things over to one of our instructors, Logan Fletcher, who's going to tell you about his course and what he does.
Okay, well, hi. Thank you very much for that introduction. So I mean, I'll just tell you a bit about myself. I first encountered cognitive science actually many years ago as an undergraduate in this very program, and I was so inspired by what I learned here that I decided to go on in graduate school to study philosophy and cognitive science, and it's a great pleasure for me to be back at the program here teaching. So I've been teaching last fall and then this fall one of the advanced level courses. This is Cog 402. So this is typically a course that students would take in their final year when they're graduating from the program, and I'm certainly aware of how special this program is. I think the integrative, interdisciplinary skill set that can be acquired here is something that's very special in the broader academic world. So this really presents a great opportunity, I think, in these upper level courses as students are preparing to take steps beyond their graduation to take the skill set that's been acquired so far, take some of these interdisciplinary skills, some of this knowledge base, and start to venture a bit out onto the frontier, as it were. So out into the wild terrain of more cutting edge contemporary ideas. And this is a bit touch and go, because of course the other side of cutting edge is that these ideas have not yet been tested. They haven't yet been digested by the field. So that's part of what we've been doing both last fall and then again this fall. So the way that I want to approach this course, Cog 402, is to try to take a cutting edge topic that ideally is captured in a kind of book length argument. So last term, I picked a provocative book on animal consciousness, and basically we spent the term preparing to read this fairly heavy-duty book by taking a tour of cognitive and neuroscientific theories of consciousness, really seeing what the state of the art there is, and then trying to address this question about what about consciousness in non-human minds? So what can we say, given the state of the art in theories of consciousness, about possibilities of animal consciousness, right? So this is really an area where you have philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, and perhaps other fields all sort of colliding. So just to talk a bit on a pedagogical level about what happens on a course like this. I mean, part of the idea is to sort of give students who are graduating from the program a set of professional skills that are going to be useful. So give a taste of what it would be like to be in a graduate seminar, in a graduate program, right? Give students a chance to actually develop throughout the course of the term a fairly substantial research paper of the sort that might actually be published in a scholarly journal. Sorry, it looks like we've got a slide here. I don't know. One of the things that we did in the course was did a kind of mock conference. So we had a kind of rehearsal of what an academic conference would be like. So we had various groups providing commentaries on a target article in one of our class meetings. And we also had an extensive peer review session. One of the main things that I think worked really well in the course last fall is that we tried to create a kind of temporary interactive research community. And I think this is one of the really interesting things that we can do in the program at this stage, right? People will have been through the program, they'll have a significant sort of common ground having been through core COG courses, but they'll also have their own distinctive interests because we have, of course, people who are studying linguistics in the field, people who are psychologists, people who are philosophy majors. So part of what we tried to create is a topic area that's narrow enough to keep everyone focused, but actually broad enough to allow a lot of diversity in terms of paper projects. And then we tried to have a lot of collaborative interaction when it came to the paper topics. So there was a peer review process where students would review each other's drafts. This was done anonymously, right? And I know students really appreciated getting to see each other's work in progress. So we also had a kind of collaborative annotated bibliography where students would post sources that are relevant to their own research projects, and then we all have a kind of common pool that we can draw on. So that's the sort of sense of what I've been trying to create in this classroom, is that we have serious research projects being carried out on a cutting edge topic in cognitive science in a way that's within a sort of collaborative interdisciplinary space, so that we have different students having partially overlapping projects that have a chance to inform each other, right? So that's something that I think was really exciting about the course last term. So I'll just say a little bit just to introduce what the topic is going to be this term. So so last term, as I mentioned, we talked about this issue of animal consciousness. What is consciousness like in other kinds of minds? Which kinds of animals are conscious at all? What is their consciousness like? How do we know? Can we ever answer these questions? Right, so this is the sort of stuff we were considering. What I thought I'd do this fall is take on sort of a bit of a quirky topic, but I think it's likely to become increasingly central to the field. So there's something interesting happening right now in psychiatry. There's a new treatment that's being tested. It's still very much in an early phase, but this treatment seems to have unusual qualities that place it apart from more established treatments, right? So So this is a pharmacological treatment. It seems to be promising for things like anxiety, depression, and drug addiction. In fact, some people have claimed that it's likely to revolutionize treatment. It's a single dose, sometimes two, and it's delivered in conjunction with some oversight from a therapist. Okay, and this treatment seems to have profound effects that go beyond sort of existing treatments that are available. But there's something really weird about this treatment. It doesn't seem as though it's actually the drug itself that is having the desired therapeutic benefits. It actually seems instead that what the drug is doing is it delivers a temporary experience, a conscious experience, and that's what seems to have therapeutic benefits down the road. Now, this is a fascinating proposition because we don't normally have this kind of situation with drug treatments for mental health issues, right? This is an experience that's actually doing the job. And even weirder, it seems to be a kind of mystical experience, right? So the sort of experimental therapy I have in mind here is therapy using psychedelics. And this is now being tested more and more widely. So there's now a research center just at University of Toronto, Mississauga that works on microdosing psychedelics. And they, I believe, are currently the major research center in the world doing this. So this research is moving along, and this is exactly the right time, I think, to take our interdisciplinary skills that we've acquired in the program and try to make some sense of this as philosophers, as psychologists, and more generally as cognitive scientists. So that's going to be what we're looking at this fall, and I'm really excited about it. I think we're going to crack into some really interesting areas where the debates have only just gotten started. So that just gives you a little bit of a taste of what I'm trying to do in the advanced level courses that come towards the end of the program. So that's just a brief introduction there. I think that's really all I wanted to say. So thank you for listening, and looking forward to seeing you around the program this fall.
I would like to pass things now over to Professor Yang Zhu, who is our representative of the integration of cognitive science and computer science. So please take it away, Yang.
Thanks, John. Welcome to the Cognitive Science program. My name is Yang Xu. I am an assistant professor jointly appointed in the Department of Computer Science and also the Cognitive Science program. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the two courses that I teach in the program and also some research opportunities. And this is particularly for the computational cognition stream. Next slide, please. So the first course I teach is entitled Data Computation and the Mind. The course code is COG 260. This is a course that is offered in each fall, in the fall semester. So it's an entry-level course that sought to integrate three disciplines, so cognitive science, computer science, which interestingly is part of cognitive science, and also the emergent data science. It's kind of an interesting course because for computer scientists, you will learn a bit about human cognition, and you will encounter topics such as object recognition, number, spatial cognition, how things are categorized in the world, language, and communication. And you will learn how you can start using computer programs and making use of data to analyze human behavior in these domains. For students who came from psychology or linguistics background, you will learn a bit about hands-on programming, and the specific choice we have in this course is Python Jupyter Notebook, which has been really popularized over the past 5 years, I would say. And towards the end of the course, there's a data-centric project where students will pair up and explore a data set of significant complexity. Next slide, please. So to give you a taste of this project, this is the default data set students get to work with, even though you have the choice of working on your own proposed project. So this data set is known as the World Color Survey, and it was a classic survey collected by scholars from UC Berkeley in the United States. This data set is comprised of color naming data from 110 languages in the world. So for each language, speakers would name each of these color chips as shown on the left-hand side, and you wind up with a map of color names for each of these languages. So for instance, on the right-hand side, I'm showing you two example languages, one from Ivory Coast and the other from Panama. So the clusters here tell you the rough naming extensions of these color terms. In the case of Wobe, for instance, there are only 3 color terms, roughly corresponding to dark, white, and sort of reddish color, which is very different from English, where we have about 11 basic color terms. At the bottom here, this language has 6 color terms. So with this data set, you can explore lots of questions. For instance, despite this color naming variation across languages, can we say something universal about these cultures, despite their linguistic differences? And similarly, you might ask questions like, why does such variation exist in the first place? And are there differences between gender or between speakers of different generations or different age groups? And so this is just giving you a taste of the kind of project that you get to work with in this elementary course, entry course to data computation in the mind. The second course I teach, next slide please. The second course I teach is offered in the spring semester each year. For this particular year, I won't be teaching it myself because I'm on teaching relief, but I will be continuing with this course in the following year. And this is a seminar in cognitive science. It's an advanced seminar, and you can think of this as a sequel to the previous course I introduced to Cog 260. So some of the topics might overlap, but in this particular course, we're going into more depth, particularly from a mathematical perspective. So this course is led by the students who take this course. So we'll discuss papers by having students present those published papers, primarily in the fields of computational cognition and artificial intelligence. So some of the topics entail neural networks or connectionism, probabilistic models, or Bayesian inference. Similar to Cog 60, the primary tool for conducting data analysis in this course would also be Python Jupyter Notebook. And this course ends with a self-defined computationally oriented project. So this concludes what I wanted to say about these two courses. Yeah, you will be able to find more information about these courses on my webpage if you just Google my name. And you're welcome to ask me more questions offline as well, or during the Q&A session. I want to say a bit about the research opportunities that we bring to this program. Over the past couple of years, I've been working with many undergrads from the CogSci program, different research projects, and I would say the majority of these projects end up being published in the CogSci conference. So here are just 2 example projects to give you a taste for what it is like to doing research in computational cognition. So the left project was led by a student named Emmy Liu. So in this project, we're interested in how language orders compositional expressions like numerals. And we asked the question, why is it that across many languages, there are more languages that term the number 85 as 85 as opposed to 580, sort of flipped order? And we came up with an information theoretic argument about why is it more intuitive to term things like 85 as opposed to 580. And interestingly, if you look at Old English, It was actually 580 that is the dominant way of terming 85. So the question there is why all of a sudden historically there was this switch to 85 from 580. So this project ended up being published in the CogSci conference about 2 years ago, and Emmy now is doing graduate studies at Carnegie Mellon in Language Technology Institute. On the right-hand side is a more recent project that I did with student Ben Pristowski, where we were looking at gender association in children's language. So in this project, Ben looked at a big database known as the CHILDIS database that features conversations between children and their caretakers. And he was particularly interested in the extent to which children's speech or children's language is generally biased. It seems intuitive that certain words might be uttered more frequently by boys versus girls and vice versa for girls. And Ben tested this kind of intuition in this children's data set. And we were also interested in where such gender association came from. Are they influenced by adults' language, and to what extent social demographics, such as your social class or social status, might influence the degree of gender association in children's language. And this work was also published in the CogSci conference just over a year ago. And Ben is now starting his PhD program at Stanford. So the primary ways of doing research in my lab is through the NSERC USRA program, which you can apply to through the Department of Computer Science. But I also want to mention that there are also other venues of doing research, such as through a work study or through an independent study from one of the courses that you might choose. Okay, I think that's it from me. If you can go to the next slide, I'll just show you my email here. I can only stay till 2 p.m. today, but I'll stay through the Q&A session if you have any questions, and you can always email me if you have anything offline. Thank you, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Yang. And so now we're going to move to some Q&A, and you'll have a chance here to also meet some of the administrators, Kamla and Jesse, and they're going to read some of the questions that have been gathered from the chat.
There's been a lot of sort of a chat about COG 250, John. It's in regards to possibly increasing the enrollments to COG 250, and a lot of students are concerned. Of course, you know, there's a long wait list, and they're finding it very challenging to get there. Now that the course is online asynchronous, they're wondering whether another section may possibly be possible. You know what I mean?
That's an excellent question, and in a perfect universe, the answer would be, of course, we will do this. The problem that we face, and one of the things we face, sort of two things. This is a highly sought after program, so there's a lot of competition to get into the program. And the other important constraint is the fact that we are in a partnership with the other core four that I've mentioned: psychology, linguistics, philosophy, and computer science. Which means we cannot grow beyond what they can accommodate into their various departments. So, for example, we can't suddenly dump a whole bunch of cognitive science students into psychology classes because they will get overloaded, and and the psychology department quite rightly wants to give priority to its psychology students. So we have a negotiated relationship, which we constantly renegotiate in good faith on all parts concerned, that CogSci will grow at a certain rate so that the home departments can accommodate that growth. So for both of those reasons, the fact that there's a lot of competition to get into this program, and also because of those very important constraints, because of the partnership with the other disciplines, we have to limit enrollment in COG 250 as a way of limiting the growth that we've agreed to with the other departments. So I know that's not perfect, and I deeply appreciate the enthusiasm that a lot of people have for cognitive science and for COG 250, but you need to understand, please, that this program is not sort of isolated. It's deeply interwoven with the core four, and therefore we have to respect the concerns of those other disciplines. I hope that answers the question.
There's another couple of students have asked the question in regards to COG 343, whether that course may be offered in the future. We had some students interested in taking it, but of course it's not offered this year. They were just interested in the course being when the course or if the course will be offered in future.
So that's a good question. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's not offered this year. I'm hoping that we will be able to offer it next year. Part of the problem, of course, has been the way COVID has slammed into everything and upset a lot of plans, the best laid plans of mice and men, oft gang awry, and that very much has happened. But it should be the case that we will be able to offer it in the future.
I had some questions. Student had some questions about career opportunities and what internship opportunities and career opportunities. I did refer some students to the Student Life website, which I've posted. This has more information on career options and what's career available to you based on possibly your subject matter and sort of how to explore more things. And regarding the internship, unfortunately, the COG program doesn't offer internships. Other departments may offer that. If you're eligible to apply, you may be able to do internships available through that, but regrettably there's no internship available through cognitive science. But of course, I stand to be corrected if there may be plans in the future.
Thank you, Kamala. I'd like to add to that we also will be offering next term COG 415, and COG 415 is designed to do community partnership, in which you will be doing obviously an academic course fourth year, but you will be interacting with a real world entity, organization of some type, and that is a way to help facilitate the skill development and a bit of the networking that will help with career development. The instructor for that course almost always runs some additional work on resume preparation, CV preparation, things like that. So another thing to consider is to take 415 when you get the chance.
There was a question from a student in regards to books, movies, documentaries, recommendations related to COG Sci. Should you have any that students could be pointed to learn more about those kinds of information?
There's a lot out there. There's some classic introductory books. There's a Cambridge book on the introduction to COG Sci. There's a Bermudez book called Introduction to Cognitive Science. Those are some pretty good books. I'm going to be a little bit self-promotional here. I have a YouTube channel in which I have a ton of videos and video series in which cognitive science plays a prominent role. One of the playlists is called the Cognitive Science Show. Done one on consciousness, one on the nature of the self, doing one on the nature of transformation. This is me interacting with other academics, and you can see an integration of argumentation and dialogue about that. So you can see people doing COG Sci, not just presenting the material. So that's a good place to take a look if you want to get. And if you check out one of my series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which has a lot of COG Sci in it, there's a ton of book references through that entire series.
My apologies. I was actually finding your YouTube page. I was going to link that to it, and just sort of people can see as an example. I've linked John Vervaeke's, I lost it, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis YouTube page that he was referring to, and you can find out more information about other cognitive science related matter. I believe at this moment, I think we've captured most of the questions at this moment. And I do apologize if I missed your question. We will pick it up again during the second Q&A session. Feel free, of course, to post it again on the Q&A.
Thank you. These have been excellent questions. One more time, just to remind people, Professor Yang Zhu won't be able to stay much longer. This is the golden opportunity to ask any questions of him right now. So please take this opportunity to ask him any questions. This is a good time to ask Logan some questions too. So let's maybe another minute or so and see if there's any questions specifically to those two.
I think there's a question to Yan about COG 403. Even we know that Yan is not teaching COG 403 this year, but maybe eventually Yan will teach it again. And the question is about, can we take COG 403 without taking COG 260 if we studied CS and stats, machine learning, for example?
So the quick answer to that question is no. And this is primarily because COG 260 is a prerequisite for 403. Some of the content in COG 260 became quite relevant in COG 403, specifically regarding the cognitive aspects. So it is strongly recommended that you have taken COG 260 before proceeding to 403.
I have a question, John, this is a question to you. It came up in regards to second-year students who weren't able, or Jesse, of course, second-year students who weren't able to enroll in COG 250. Any suggestions on what they can do in the interim or anything?
I'll let Jesse speak after me, but the reason some people were denied access to the program is because they didn't meet the prerequisites as specified in the calendar. So it's very important, and there was quite a few people for whom that was the case. So please check the calendar very carefully before you apply and make sure that you have met the requirements to properly apply to the course. Jesse and I go through the applications in detail. We check for transfer credits. We check for possible things that have missed. We go over it in detail. But if you don't have the required prerequisites to apply to the program, which I talked about at the beginning, then we can't admit you. Okay, we can't extend an invitation. For some of you, the issue was perhaps you met those, but your average mark is too low. Again, because cognitive science is a competitive program, there is a floating average, which we calculate on a year-by-year basis that you need to meet in the courses that you are using to apply to the program in order to get into the program. If that is your situation, then, and I don't mean this to be flippant in any way, flippant advice or anything like that. I'm not trying to be dismissive, but what you need to do is to take some other courses, if possible, that could be relevant to COG Sci and raise your mark, your average mark, in order to get into the program. Now, some of you might not fall into either one of those two categories, and so I can't give a kind of categorical answer to your question. Some of you might have some very particular details or idiosyncratic reasons why you weren't able to get into the program. If that's the case, then you need to contact Jessie Chen, who I'll let speak in a minute, and she will contact me, and we will review your case on an ad hoc basis. So those are the three basic ways in which you can respond to not getting into the program. I'll let Jessie speak now, though.
Yeah, John pretty much covered everything. So very basic requirements that you have to complete 4 credits to apply to our program. We've noticed that some students, maybe in your first year, you drop a course so that you only have 3 credits, 3.5 credits. So that's really the minimum program eligibility that you don't meet that eligibility, we can accept you. And also 2 ways you can get into our program, either take COG 250 or have 1.5 credits in linguistics, CSE, philosophy, psychology, and each category have to be maximum 1 credit. So you like we're really in a program that we are focusing on interdiscipline. You can just take all the CSE courses and want to get into our program, or all the linguist courses want to take into the program. And also we're a limited enrollment program that we do have a cutoff, and this cutoff may change every year, every round, depending on how many applicants and also how many spots we have. So that like if you got denied this year, if you're still interested in CogSci, we encourage you to reapply next year. And also the courses you are taking in the following year from 2021 to 2022, if you have higher grade, we will also look at them as well, so that it may increase your chance to get to your program next year. John, anything to add on? Oh, one more thing, if you really not sure about your specific case, you can email me at uc.academicservices@utoronto.ca.com so that I may look into your academic history and get to know exactly why it got denied.
Just before Yang Zhu leaves, I have a question directly for you. It's in regards to your research course. I have a question here that asks about specific background knowledge for the research project for you.
So I don't have a set of criteria for doing research. I think it's partly project dependent, and also it depends on students' interest. But because I'm in computer science, I do expect students to have basic proficiency in computer programming and dealing with data, and ideally with a strong interest in cognitive science of language. So hopefully that answers your question. And you're welcome to email me if you have more questions.
If we're going to continue, we're receiving a lot of questions from students in regards to not being able to get enrolled into COG 250 and what to do. This is sort of to address a lot of those concerns, and we do empathize with students not being able to enroll in the course that they would like. It goes down to sort of like your enrollment date, and when your enrollment date will determine how likely you may get into the course or not. Should you not be able to get into the course, please don't be discouraged. It does happen to a lot of people, but we do suggest trying to take the course the following year. Usually in the following year, your enrollment date will be a lot sooner, so which will give you a better opportunity to take the course itself. The other thing that was suggested by Professor Viveki was, should you have another major, you may want to take courses that will fulfill the other major, or augment your breadth of knowledge by taking other courses that will help to firm your knowledge in the area that you would like to study. Just continue on and then just go back and try to enroll in the course again. It's not ideal. There has been a lot of pushback and a lot of concerns from students about that not being fair, but this is the most legal way, the most equal way to kind of ensure people will be able to complete their program in a timely fashion. Though it seems maybe that it's very difficult at the start, it will become progressively easier to enroll in your courses should you as you progress throughout the year, from your second to your third, your fourth. When I went through university, I had the same problems. First years, I started taking courses that were interesting, not necessarily relevant, but I still had to keep on going. But as the years progressed, it was a lot easier to enroll in those types of courses.
Thank you, Kamala.
Sorry, that was a longer answer, and I hope that does answer a lot of the questions. It's not the most is comforting, but it's a lot of students are in the same situation and are struggling. But please be aware that as you progress on, it will become a lot easier, and you always have us, Jesse and myself, and we can always help you through your programs no matter what. So we have other options available to us to kind of make your enrollment into certain courses a lot more easier. But do try, of course, to enroll yourself and just keep on going. Just keep on continuing on. You'll be able to get the course that you want.
Kamala, we have another question for Professor Xu regarding Cog 260. Do you want to read it or should I?
Sorry, if you don't mind reading that one, I missed that one.
Okay, yeah, sure. Question for Professor Xu. Regarding Cog 260, is it coding heavy? Even though I took CSE 108 and it is an eligible prerequisite, I am worried that I may be unprepared for Cog 260.
That's a great question. So CSE 108 is the only programming prerequisite for this course. So I wouldn't say the programming in this course is heavy. However, we will be dealing with real-world messy data, so that's something to be expected, but we will help you through that process. So I think you would expect a ramp up in the complexity of programming over time in that course, but the initial assignments should be okay.
We do have one question from a person who would like to sort of verbalize their question, and they feel that a lot more comfortable. Would that be permitted?
We actually don't have the ability for attendees to speak verbally on this platform.
Mm.
I think we've answered most. I do hope that we've answered most of your questions at this moment.
I think that's good, Kamala. So I'd like to turn things over now to CASA. That's the Cognitive Science Artificial Intelligence Student Association, and it's one of the best student associations on campus in North America. In fact, they've won an award. So I'm going to turn it over to them now.
Okay, so you heard some very flattering words from Professor Vervaeke. Hey everyone, my name is Sophia, and I am a representative of CASA, which is an undergraduate course union representing students who either are taking a COG course or who are in a cognitive science program. So our full name is Cognitive Science and Artificial Intelligence Student Association, but as you can imagine, that is quite a mouthful, so we generally go by CASA. So next slide. So I'm just going to start by introducing our exec. So I am a co-president of CASA alongside Ayush. I know that some of you were asking about career options, so I'll just kind of, I'll also run through everyone's intended career paths as I go through them, if I remember them. So Ayush intends to go into software, I think it was software design or something, after his undergraduate degree. Ayush is going into his 4th year, and he is doing a double minor in cognitive science and statistics. My name is Sophia. I'm going into my 3rd year. I am currently in a computer science minor and an economics major. I intend to do a program change in the near future, and I intend to go to med school after my undergraduate degree. Justice is going into his 3rd year. He is doing a double major in psychology and cognitive science. Marion, also going into her 3rd year, she's doing a major in computer science and a minor in mathematics. I think Alvina's here, so I'm just going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Alvina, and I'm in 3rd year. I'm doing a double major in cognitive science, specifically the brain stream, and psychology, and I have a minor in classical civilization. I'm also the comms director for this year.
And lastly, I realize now that I haven't been going through everyone's roles, but I assume that you guys are literate. So. And last but not least, we have Amina, our conference coordinator. She is also going into her 3rd year, and she is, if I forgot which one's her major and which one's her minor, but she's doing computer science and psychology. Next slide. So we're just gonna casually open a chasm between myself and a bunch of the other execs, not because they smell bad, but because, next slide, we have an opening. We're currently looking for a treasurer, and we will be holding a by-election in late September. Nominations should be opening on Monday, so stay tuned for more details on how to stay updated. Note that short hair is not a requirement. So next slide. Yeah, so those are our execs. Now, what do we actually do as a student association? So I'm going to go through these a little bit out of order. So first of all, CASA holds a lot of socials for you to get to know the rest of your cognitive science community. And so we'll be holding a COG250 game night next on Monday the 20th. We'll also be holding a game night. I think it's on the 22nd. So game nights are a great way to get to know your fellow students. We also, pre-COVID, we would hold pub nights. We might be bringing them back, but we're not sure yet. And so there's that. We also provide a lot of support for people who are taking COG250. So for example, for people in COG250, we generally hold workshops before each test and before each paper is due to just help you get a better idea of your direction. And we also keep an essay bank so that you can take a look at people's essays from previous years to help you figure out your direction. In addition to that, we hold office hours. Right now, they're online, but depending on the COVID situation, we might start holding in-person office hours within the next few months. And those provide a nice little mix where if you have any academic questions or just general life questions, you can feel free to ask us. But if you just want to chill or sit there and do homework or something, that's also fine. For those interested in research, we also hold research talks. So those are times when we might invite a graduate student or a postdoc to present their research. And we also for those doing undergraduate research, we also hold a conference every year. So we alternate between 2 conferences, Confluence and UTism. Confluence is our undergraduate research conference, where if you're an undergraduate and you have done some research, then you can actually present your research at Confluence. And in the years where we don't have Confluence, we have UTism, which stands for the University of Toronto Interdisciplinary Symposium of the Mind. And at UTism, we have a theme for every year, and from there we invite around 7 or 8 speakers. Some of them from U of T, some of them from universities in the US, some of them from other Ontario universities. So last year, for example, 2 years ago, we had a speaker from, I think it was, I forgot whether it was MIT or Harvard. I want to say it was MIT, for example, who will come present their research and discuss some interesting questions in the field during a panel. And lastly, Ayush had this idea because he took COG 415, because what he realizes, and what you might have realized by now, is that much of the events that we hold are much more research focused. And so while Ayush was taking taking 415 with Professor Mamie, he realized that, for context, COG 415 is a course where they discuss what you can do with CogSci. And I just realized that a lot of our events are very research focused. So this year we intend to also hold some events that focus more on applied paths. So we intend to invite some alumni for some talks about possible career paths. And we also intend to hold some resume workshops about how to essentially sell yourself. So if any of this is something, so if you think that you would be interested in any of this, feel free to find us on our COG 250 Facebook group if you're taking that. We also have a Facebook page. You can just look up CASA or Cognitive Science and Artificial Intelligence Student Association. We should be fairly easy to find. There's also the link to our Discord server, tinyurl.com/CASA Discord 2021. And if you want to join our mailing list, because you're not automatically on our mailing list, feel free to email us at casa.uft@gmail.com. Yeah, so, oh, right, next slide. Yeah, so once again, we have some upcoming events. If you're in COG 250, we're holding a games night after your first town hall. So that's going to be on Monday, September the 20th at about 6 p.m. We've actually recently finished polling for our online game night and general meeting. So if you'd like to join us on Discord on Wednesday, the 22nd at 8 p.m., we would love to see you there. And if you'd really like to get involved, you can actually run at our upcoming election. We have 2 positions open, one for our COG 250 class representative and one for our treasurer. If you're interested in getting involved but don't get elected, still stay tuned, because we also have other opportunities coming up, such as volunteering to help out with one of our conferences, or being an admin and helping answer questions in office hours. All right, I think that's it for me at the moment. I think Mirto.
Sophia, just wanted to
yes.
add a bit. We
Yes.
also did complete finding the time for our first general meeting, and it will
Yes.
be on Wednesday, September 22nd at 8 p.m. So it will also be on Discord.
Yes, that is correct. Thanks,
Cool.
Albina. Yeah, so I think that's about it for me. I think Mirto will be talking about CogSci in the linguistics department next, so I'm just gonna pass it on to her.
So hi everyone, welcome to the Cognitive Science program from me as well. My name is Mirto Grigoroglu and I'm faculty here at the Cognitive Science program, and I'm also appointed at the Department of Linguistics here at St. George. So what I'm going to talk to you about is language and cognition, which is my field of study, and also, the field of my teaching as well. So I also have my information here, you can reach out to me, that's my email, and there's also a link to my lab webpage if you want to know more about the research I do, and opportunities to get involved in research. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so why study language while we are in a cognitive science program? Well, there's many reasons. There's the obvious reason that language is part of cognition, therefore we need to study language in order to, be well-rounded cognitive scientists. But there's also other reasons why studying language is worthwhile and important for a cognitive scientist. And the first reason is that language is is something that is unique to humans. Therefore, to study language means that we study those unique characteristics of the human mind that set us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom. And the other good reason to study language is something that John Vervecchi mentioned earlier in his presentation, that basically language is the expression of our thought. So it's like a physical manifestation of the inner workings of our minds, and therefore when we study language, we actually study how our thought is organized conceptually. And up until recently, we actually didn't have any other means to study the inner workings of our minds. So if you can go on to the next slide. So the question that informs my research and also my teaching here at University College is, how does language interact with other aspects of cognition? Next slide, please. And here at the Cognitive Science program, I teach two courses. So I teach COG 344, which is actually a course that I teach this term as well. And the title of this course is Language and Communication. And in this course, we ask the question of how social cognition interacts with language. So when we communicate in social context. So we use language in social context, and therefore, you know, all these interactions rely on a psychological infrastructure of shared intentions, which is, you know, what our social cognition is about. Therefore, in this course, we want to see how this psychological infrastructure, our social cognition, interacts with purely linguistic systems. And the other class that I teach in the Cognitive Science program is COG 404, which is a capstone seminar that you can take in your 4th year, and I'm teaching this in the winter term. And in this course, we ask a somewhat different question. So we know that language and cognition interact in different ways, but in this class, we ask whether language can actually shape cognition. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this course and give you some examples. So if you can go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so basically a bit more practical question that we're going to ask is whether people who speak different languages actually think differently. And next, please. Okay, so there are many different languages in the world, so we know that. And we also know that languages differ significantly in the syntactic constructions and the word meanings that they have. Next slide. So the question that we are going to ask is whether these systematic linguistic differences that lead to whether these systematic linguistic differences actually lead to differences in cognitive processing for speakers of different languages. So we need to make this specific enough in order to ask this question. And I should say that this is actually a question that is very popular in folk psychology. So people hold this belief that people who speak different languages actually think differently. But hopefully, you know, by taking this class, you're going to bust this myth. If you can go on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a brief example of the type of stuff that we look into in this course. And this example here has to do with the domain of motion. And when we talk or conceptualize a motion event, there are different categories that we need to, that we have in mind when we are thinking about a motion event. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so basically one of these categories is the figure, the moving entity. And in this case, it's the kids. Next slide. We also have the ground. That's another conceptual category that we need to represent. And in this case, it's the road. Next. There is also the path of motion, which is the direction towards which the figure is moving. And finally, there is also the manner of motion, which concerns the how the figure is moving. And in this case, the kids are running. So if you can move on. Okay, so linguistic research across languages has identified how these conceptual categories map onto specific linguistic constructions. And for example, in English, a speaker would say the children run across the street. And in this case, you have like in the sentence, the figure, the main verb encodes the manner of motion. So how did children move? They ran. The path of motion is encoded in a prepositional phrase, across, and you also have the ground in a noun phrase. But not all languages package information in the same way. And if we go on to the next slide, we will see another example from Greek, modern Greek. And in this case, a speaker would be more likely to describe the scene by saying the children crossed the street, and then the manner of motion would often be omitted. So in this case, the main difference that we see across languages is the type of information that they package in the main verb, and the main verb is considered the most prominent position in linguistics. So other languages that are non-Germanic package path of motion in the main verb, while English and other Germanic languages prefer to encode the manner in this position. So if we can move on to the next slide. So, this is a simple presentation. We need to identify systematic linguistic differences across languages, and then we can ask different questions concerning the interactions of language and thought. So we can ask whether these linguistic descriptions hold by testing actual speakers. We can also experiment with kids and see at what age these cross-linguistic patterns emerge. And this is important for questions about cognition, because we want to know, do these patterns affect the way people think, and at what age this starts. And we can also ask questions concerning specific mental processes such as memory or event apprehension. And we want to see whether people who speak different languages actually think differently in these specific domains. So you can move on to the next slide. So these are the kinds of things that we do in this course, and the topics that we study include other domains of the human experience, such as orientation in space, color, time, number, and sources of knowledge. And all these domains of human experience are domains that have been shown to differ cross-linguistically. And then we want to examine the relation of these language-specific encodings with different cognitive processes such as memory, perception, categorization, and all of that. And finally, I will briefly mention, if you want to go on to the next slide. So just a few things about how the course is organized. So this is a seminar type course, so we read original research, and active learning is prioritized. So it is you, the students, who actually lead the discussion on these topics. And there is no exam, there's a final project, which is research-based. And because this is a course that relies a lot on experimental methodology, you actually have to propose an experiment, which could be interesting enough to actually be run. So the goal is to create projects and have research ideas that could be actual papers that could get published. And another important component of this course is that it introduces students to open science practices. So we talk about issues of reproducibility in psychological science, which is very often connected to experimental studies. And we talk about ways to promote open science practices. And we actually, do it ourselves. So I would like to thank you for listening to me, and let me know if you have any questions in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Merto. I think we should move on if you don't mind. I think we'll start the second Q&A. I just wanted to sort of follow up. I think there was a question that may not have been addressed correctly in regards to enrollment, priorities. Just to reassure every COG student, once you're enrolled in the program, yes, you do have priority enrollment. That is slightly different in terms of when you get into the program and enrolling in courses. There's some slight differences. For example, if you applied to the program and got in during the first round, decisions are posted onto your ACORN before the July enrollment period starts. So a lot of the students who came in during the first round, the priority does apply. You will have a lot more chances, or a lot easier to enroll in COG 250, for example, or other COG courses. Should you come in during the second round doesn't close until September, and our decisions don't get posted onto ACORN until the second week of September, well after the July enrollment period. So technically, anybody who enrolls during the second round is enrolling in courses without any priority given at all. So you're just kind of, it's unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Arts and Science is aware of the situation and how it puts a little bit of an imbalance for some students enrolling. They just, and unfortunately we can't change that. It's just the fact that the mere fact that they are offering a second round will give students an opportunity to get into the programs. Normally there might be only one round, but they offered a 2-round thing, and this is the situation that arose from having a second round. It's not ideal, but it does allow students who come in a bit later. Transfer students, for example, do come in during the second round, and they are in the same situation. But the following enrollment period, if you're already in the program, of course you will have priority, and of course you will have an easier chance in enrolling any COG courses. In regards to COG 250 for the summertime, there is no plans on it offering during the summertime. The reason is to hark back on Professor Viveki's point that we have to maintain our enrollment, and by introducing a second round, or sorry, introducing COG 250 during the summer will increase our enrollment too much that we can't maintain it. So we have to restrict it to an extent, and that's why we can only offer it during 250. But again, if you aren't able to take it, please try again the following year, and it should be a lot easier for you. And I do hope that clarifies some of the situation. It's unfair. It seems unfair, but it does work out in the long run. Sorry, there was another question. I just kind of scrolled past it. I do apologize. I'm just trying to find it. A lot of questions. My apologies. I don't see anything. Does anybody have any points or any things they'd like to add at this moment?
John, you're muted.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Okay. For COG 250, as Kama mentioned that for students who are enrolled in round 2, next year you will have the priority to enroll in COG 250. So don't be worried. And also, I think some students are worried about for some year 3, year 4 courses which require COG 250 as a prerequisite. You're worried about you haven't taken and like how to plan your year 3, year 4. So in that case, you can still try to add those courses when it's course enrollment, and then email course instructors. Sometimes some course instructors do allow you to take COG 250 and their courses at the same term, and we are aware of the situation. So yeah, John, anything else to add on?
No, thank you for that, Jesse and Kamla, and I'm glad that you two have once again demonstrated how helpful you both are Thank you, Kamala, for shouldering that rather difficult question. We've answered it, and not that we shouldn't have. We've answered it in 3 different ways. So I think that's we've given a very complete answer overall. I have to apologize because my mute and unmute functions are not working in a reliable fashion. It'll say that I'm not muted, and I am, and it'll say I'm muted when I'm not. And so if I seem a little bit out of sync, that's what's happening right now. Are there any other questions that we should address? Yes, Kamala.
Kamala's screen appears to have frozen.
Yes, so we're just waiting for a second here. Kamala was frozen. Maybe his cat was trying to type, so he seems to be back with us now. So Kamala, were there any other questions?
My apologies. Yes, Kat. There is a question in regards to the priority or the enrollment control for Psych 201. Jesse, that might be a good question for you to ask. It says here, do you know why the priority does not apply? Oops, sorry. Sorry, I lost the question. Bugger.
Oh, sorry, I just published it.
Just published it, yes, I see. Sorry, the question is, do you know why the priority does not apply for Psych 201, which is a prerequisite for the completion of the program?
Is that, Kamala, is that a priority for CogSci students? Is that the nature of the question?
Yes, they're sort of asking in terms of why there isn't a priority for COG. I'm assuming why COG students don't have a priority to take Psych 201 or priority enrollments to take 201, for example.
So I will answer that question. So the cognitive science program has to negotiate with the home departments, in this case psychology, on a case-by-case basis as to which courses we have a guaranteed amount slotted to us for CogSci students. 201 is not one of those courses. Now there are other places where we have a significant priority. So for example, not only do you have some priority for 370 and 371, you can count Cog 250 as a prerequisite. So for some courses we get a special privilege. For some courses, we have some priority in that there are slots assigned to us. And then for some, the home department says, no, those are in such high demand by our own students, we have to continually give them full priority. And so we have to negotiate this on a course-by-course basis.
A more direct question for you, Professor Vervaeke. Do you offer some meditation practice sessions? I almost want to say yes, but of course I don't want to speak on your behalf.
I have in the past offered meditation courses and Tai Chi Chuan courses through the Multi-Faith Center. I'm not doing that this term. COVID has called that into question. However, and again, not to be self-promotional, I do have an online course that was recorded last year. So during COVID last year, I offered a daily weekday course on meditation, mindfulness meditation, contemplative practices, and then thereafter a weekend course weekly on the weekends on drawing from the Western wisdom traditions like Epicureanism, Stoicism, and Neoplatonism. That's all online. It's on my YouTube channel, 2 playlists. You can go watch the whole thing. You can also skip specifically to the playlist for just the instructional lessons and not the general sitting lessons. So there's an entire thing there for people who want to take up a meditation practice.
And I believe there was a, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was just going to say, it's, just type in meditating with John Vervaeke.
I believe there was a question, maybe an open question to CASA or the directors, whether there's going to be any events that will be offered in person. I'm unsure whether that was answered.
Who would you like to start? Okay, I'll start then. Okay, so with reference to CASA events, all of our September events will be online. UTism will, so our big conference with the with profs from the US, UTism, that will be in early February. So we're hoping that the COVID situation will die down a bit more by then, but yeah, so we're hoping to have it in person, but depending on the situation, we might move it online. As for our other events, we are still figuring it out because there's just a lot of uncertainty right now, but if you follow our mailing lists, Discord, Instagram, or Facebook page, we will keep you posted.
Hello there, everybody. Do let me know if you're having difficulty seeing me or hearing me. I think I'm coming through, but I've got the chat open, so ping me if I'm wrong about that. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I'm just stepping in from other orientation events taking place in my other unit, which is philosophy. That's relevant because I've prepared a few remarks about the role of philosophy in the cognitive sciences. I am a philosopher by training, and I view myself very much as a philosopher working within the field, the interdisciplinary field of cognitive science. So I wanted to say something about that to those of you who might be curious about it. Before I get to that, though, I want to say something about the role of our 3rd and 4th year courses in the general CogSci curriculum. Now, you know, John, Murto, feel free to yell at me if I'm covering ground that you've already covered. But let me just say this. We set up our CogSci curriculum so that students entering the program enjoy a year-long introductory course. This is our very popular Cog 250Y, Introduction to Cognitive Science course. The idea is that that course introduces students to the amazing interdisciplinary field of cognitive science, but also gets them thinking in terms of how the various elements of cognitive science, psychology, linguistics, computer science, philosophy, are integrated into an ongoing intellectual enterprise. What then happens is that students who take in Cog 250Y, they choose, depending on their major, arts major or science major, a stream. Maybe you're an arts major pursuing the perception and attention stream. Maybe you're a science major interested in computational cognition. Students choose a stream based on their interests within the field, based on what they've learned in Cog 250Y, what piqued their curiosity. And they go on to choose from a number of courses offered in units all over the Faculty of Arts and Science. These are courses in linguistics, computer science and AI, philosophy of mind, cognitive psychology, cognitive neuroscience, and so on. Now, what's great about that is that it allows students within our program to draw on the tremendous intellectual wealth we have on offer here in our courses at U of T, within the faculty. But what it does mean, though, is that students, after that initial experience of all being together, kind of get thrown out, right? U of T is a big place. And so we thought when we put our curriculum together that it would be a very nice idea to have some special courses that students could take midway through their program, 300 level courses, where they could come back together again as cognitive science students in a kind of in-house COG setting, hence the 300 level courses. These are courses like COG 341, which I teach. We have a number of others, and if you haven't done so already, I invite you to drop by our website and just look at the course descriptions. You can also use the calendar to do this, the Arts and Science calendar, though maybe what you find on our webpage is a bit more inviting. These courses cover a range of topics, from courses to do with computer modeling, to computational linguistics, to cognitive psychology, to very theoretical philosophy of mind. Again, the idea is that these are courses, these 300 level courses, are ones where you rejoin your fellow COG students in a small group setting and talk about issues at a fairly high level, and you've all got a lot of knowledge already in your toolkits. Well, what about those fourth year courses, or let's say 400 level courses? You may be in your fourth year when you take them, maybe you're in your fifth year, it depends. The point is, another important aspect of our curriculum is the capstone experience. So students start with COG 250, they take a whole bunch of courses and units all over the faculty. If they like, they take those 300 level courses I've just described. But when it's time to finish the degree, again, we wanted students to have the opportunity to come back together and talk about an interdisciplinary COG-SCI topic at a very advanced level. At a level at which, by studying the subject in this way, they might get a taste of the kinds of things that they would explore if they were to pursue graduate studies related to COG-SCI. So this is where our 400 level courses come in, and for the most part, these are seminar type courses. I happen to teach one of them, one of the iterations of COG 401. The last few years, I've done it as a course on the cognitive science of consciousness. That's a big, juicy topic that students with all kinds of different interests can sink their teeth into in some way, right? But we have other kinds of 400 level seminar courses that students can choose from as well. The other kind of course that I want to mention are our 400 series independent study courses. Maybe you took a COG-SCI course or a COG-SCI related course in some other unit, psychology, for example. And maybe there was some issue you encountered that really bothered you. You thought, wow, this is cool, but I don't feel like I've had the opportunity to learn as much about it as I would like. I don't feel I've had the opportunity to really say what I think needs to be said about it. This is where those independent study courses come into play. What you do is, working together with Professor Vervaeke, our director, as well as other COG-SCI instructors, you hash out a topic and get set up with a faculty mentor. You then work with that mentor on a project. Typically, this results in the creation of a significant research work, something like a paper, if you do one of these with me, but it might be an experiment of some kind, or even a very detailed proposal for a complicated experiment that you might run, if only you had the resources, right? There are lots of different configurations. The point is that we have a number of these 400 level, COG 498, COG 499. Kamla can tell you lots about these. And they're ideal if you want to take a given issue or topic or question in real detail, working with a faculty mentor. It's a terrific experience. So that's a bit about the 300 and 400 series courses that we offer. That's sort of the rationale behind them. That's how they came to be. That's something very high level about what they're all about. Once I'm done with my remarks here in a few moments, I'm happy to take questions about them. If there's anything I can't answer, I can see if John or Kamla or somebody else can help out. In the time that I have left, though, let me go back to philosophy and my work as a philosopher and my role, as I see it, within the COG-SCI program. Let's see, I have until 2:45. Okay, good to go. So as you will all have heard, as you'll know, COG-SCI is an interdisciplinary, perhaps it's the interdisciplinary fields of all interdisciplinary fields. It seeks an understanding of the nature of mind that draws on a range of different sciences, but also philosophy. Now, you might have been wondering, well, look, what in the world is philosophy and what does it have to do in a cognitive science program? Well, look, if you ask 10 different philosophers, you'll get 10 different views about what philosophy is, and it might even depend on what day of the week it is, right? But I can say this by way of a sort of rough and ready account. Let's take it that what philosophy really is the attempt to understand and think rigorously and maybe even try to answer in an intellectually satisfying way? Pressing questions of human concern that we don't know how to address in any other way, including via the methods of science. So there are questions of pressing human concern that we sort of know how to science on, right? Is there a cure for cancer? Will we be able to develop a Delta-specific mRNA vaccine? These are questions of pressing human concern. But they're questions that we know, or at least think we know, enough about. We understand them well enough to see how the methods employed by the natural sciences could help us answer them and then put those answers to work, right? But there are other kinds of questions that seem as pressing, maybe even in existential ways, even more pressing, but we don't know how to address them, certainly not via the methods of the sciences. Does God exist? Do we have free will? What is it for one theory or explanation to be more rational than another? Those are questions that will keep you up at night, but they're not questions that experiments or surveys will help you to answer. So what do we do with questions like that? Do we walk away from them? No, we can't. We've got to have reasoned answers to them, because if we didn't, well, we wouldn't be able to get, amongst other things, our scientific enterprises up off the ground, because science itself depends on thinking that there are reasonable answers to questions like that that pertain to science. This is where philosophers come in. Philosophers try to get clear on these questions, possible answers, understand their significance, and try to work out reasoned ways of assessing which approaches to the questions are more plausible than others. So as a philosopher who thinks about the mind and works within an interdisciplinary cog-sci setting, what do? Well, I view my role within the cog-sci program, and this has to do with what I teach in my courses and how I teach it, in 3 parts. Okay, I jotted them down before I joined in. I'm going to read them to you. First off, in my courses, I like to approach with students and think about, and struggle with, and deal with philosophical puzzles and problems that arise from first order, bench scientific work within the field, right? So there are topics that cognitive scientists argue about and work on, topics to do with what concepts might be, whether any concepts are innate, topics to do with the nature of consciousness, theory of mind, etc. Well, all of those topics raise, in addition to interesting scientific questions, deep philosophical puzzles. This is where I can help, using the kind of training that I have as a philosopher. The second way in which my work as a philosopher is relevant to the program and its interdisciplinary nature is that in my courses, I like to deal with my students with deep conceptual problems that certain foundational but very controversial topics within cognitive science raise. If you spend time hanging out with cognitive scientists, you'll hear them, throwing around terms like computation, information processing, representation. What in the world do those terms mean? Let me let you in on a little kind of a dark secret. Nobody's really sure. Ask 10 cognitive scientists what they mean by information processing, you're likely to get 10 different answers. Even if those 10 cognitive scientists won't admit that their answers are different from other people's, philosophers can see, because we're very pedantic. Well, actually, what you said is slightly different than what she said. Anyway, so as a philosopher, I can think about conceptual puzzles that notions like this raise. What is it for something to be a computer? Seems like it'd be nice to have an answer to that question before we address the question, much debated by cognitive scientists, whether the brain is a computer. What does that even mean? Finally, and I'll bring my remarks to a close here, one thing that I'm very interested in, and I know that Professor Vervaeke is interested in this issue as well, and this is this question is a centerpiece of Cog 250 when he teaches it. Because Cog-Sci is so multidisciplinary, it's a good question, a hard question, how work in all of these different fields hangs together. Let me put it this way. Does any unified vision of the human mind emerge from the welter of activity in fields as different as theoretical linguistics, developmental linguistics, computational linguistics, cognitive neuroscience, cognitive anthropology, philosophy of mind. I could go on, right? Is all of this work spread out across these fields, each one of which is its own field in its own right? Does any vision of mind that has unity and coherence emerge, or is it just kind of a confused mess? And if it is a confused mess, is that bad? Maybe it's not. So again, as a philosopher, I can kind of take a bird's eye view on this and see what the conceptual lay of the land is like and see what possible answers to that might look like. How do we integrate all of this work into a coherent worldview, a coherent account of human mentality? Now, I don't know whether that excited you or not. I hope it does. It excites me. I think thinking about mind and thinking and feeling and consciousness is one of the most wonderful ways people can spend their intellectual time. And I think the cognitive sciences offer us an incredibly rich approach to those topics. And it's a wonderful program. The people are so friendly. And I've got to tell you, I'm in my office as I zoom in right now instead of my basement. I zoomed in from my basement last year. Even though we're not physically together, which is the ideal, this is still better. So knock on wood, we'll be able to get through this year being a bit more in person. And I'm so excited, and I can't wait to see all of you 3D in the flesh. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm at jim.john@utoronto.ca. I'm out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That was, as always, eloquent and enthusiastic, and I'm glad that many of you have had the opportunity to catch a glimpse of Jim's fire, many of you will find that that enthusiasm is matched by a very careful and often profound clarity of presentation of ideas. Students continually tell me how Jim's presentation of ideas is an exemplar of clarity and depth at the same time. And so I highly recommend you take as many courses with him, both within the CogSci program and within philosophy that you possibly can. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody who has spoken here. Logan and Murto, Yang is gone, Sophia, Alvina, Jesse, and Kamla, of course. I'm glad, as I've said already twice, but I'm going to say it a third time, that you've got to meet Kamla and Jesse. They will be your lifeboat, your lifeline, the clarion call that will call you back to sanity continually through this program. And they are the best. So reach out to them, reach out to me. We're all here to help you. I'm going to now open things up to see if there's any final questions before we bring the proceedings to a close. Any final questions that need to be addressed?
There is one that I'm just going to be publishing. My apologies. I did respond to it, but I think we should elaborate a little bit further. And this question can go out to either John or Jesse to elaborate further. And the question, of course, is a 300 for the 400 level courses. Oh, I will reiterate this question. For students who wanted to take the 400 level courses and aren't able to do so, what options are available to them?
Yes, very good question.
Just to add a little bit further, we have restricted, of course, the 400 seminar courses to 30 enrollment, so it is very limiting, and so yep. Some members want to know what other options are available to them.
So one of the options that is available is we do, on a case-by-case basis, allow substitutions. If you need to take 401 and you can't because that happens, the geometry just does not line up, we'll allow you to take 402, 403, 415. Another thing to consider, and we frequently, students avail themselves of this, is what Professor John mentioned. Strongly encourage you in that situation, especially if you can foresee it coming, to take one of our independent study projects, COG 498, COG 499. We will count that as a substitution for the required so if you're required to take 402, we will allow you to substitute 498, 499. Now, on others, then the next case is much more limited, much more ad hoc, but sometimes we will allow a course in one of the home disciplines to count at a 4th year level, especially if it's a seminar course, if it is a CogSci relevant topic. I make no promises about that. All I will promise is we will consider that if it's a reasonable proposal. So those are some of the options that are available in terms of substitutions that you can engage in if you find yourself stymied trying to get into the required 4th year course. Jessie, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. So to get, as John mentioned, that if you're not able to enroll COG 402, 403, 404, you can take COG 498 or 499 independent studies. But the enrollment for those kind of courses are slightly different. You can't just add them on Acron. You will have to contact Kamla, and he will provide you more guidance and help you to find. I think most importantly, you'll find somebody that who can be your supervisor for your independent studies. Once they agree, you will need to fill in some forms and let Kamla to enroll in COG 498 or 499. And once you're enrolled in either of those 2 courses, you will need to let me know, and I can make manual change for you on the Explorer to count that as your 400 level courses. The other thing is that we also have Dean's Promise. Dean's Promise is if you're in your last year, year 4, or you're planning to graduate. Like if say you're in year 4 right now, you're planning to graduate in November 2021. But I know like for most of the cases and for most of you, you're in year 2 only. But anyway, it's for you if you are in your last year or your 4th year, and certain course is really your program requirement that you can miss, and you have to fill in that complete that course to fill in your program requirements. You can contact us. And so either we will see if any other course of 2 we can make, or we can apply Dean's Promise for you. And this process may take some approval work and may take a few weeks. So if you already foresee that situation, I will suggest you contact us as soon as possible, so say in summertime, so that you're not missing the start of the year. Anything else to add on, John?
No, I think that's good. I think those are the most frequent options that we make use of when students are in this situation. I'm going to ask Kamla if there's any other questions that need to be addressed. I believe you're muted, Kamla.
Of course, there's one more question. I think I'm just going to publish it for everybody. It's in regards to. In regards to if you're already in the program, how difficult would it be to switch between the different streams?
So we've designed it so that it's not that difficult to switch between the streams. There are still a few minor bugs because of the transition into the streams, but it's the way it's been happening most recently is that it is not that difficult to switch streams. I, of course, recommend if you think you're going to do that as early as possible, because if you switch later, different streams have different prerequisites and requirements. And so if you do it too late, you're going to be very caught out and likely have to do another year perhaps. And of course, that is both temporally and financially expensive. So I recommend that if you're considering doing that, talk to us as soon as possible and do it as soon as possible. And the earlier you do it, the easier it will be for you.
To add on that, this process may take a few weeks and some approval work. So again, contact us as soon as possible. And also once you switch over to a new stream, or the exceptions I made for you will be lost. So you will contact me again to see any course substitutes that I have to make manual change for you again. And we try to switch you to the same same start session, say right now you're enrolling program 2021, and once you're switching to a new stream, we also try to have the same start session for 2021. But also, like every year we may have some minor change to the program requirements. You can look at it either, like I would say right now you're already enrolled in our program, check your degree score. The program requirements are the most accurate there. For academic calendar right now, it's mostly for students who are enrolling our program 2022. But you are allowed to check both, and we may, like, you may pick any course that's to your advantage. Say in the future we add on some courses that you're interested in, and also we can make minor change for you for that.
And as a follow-up to what Jesse is saying,
you're muted.
Kamala, you're muted.
My apologies. To follow up what Jesse has mentioned, you follow the program requirements based on the year that you the year that you came into the program. For example, September 2021, September 2022, you would follow the program requirements. If it changes to something different the following year, you still follow the program requirements as it was stated when you came into the program. Should you want to and feel that it's more advantageous to go to the new program, still contact Jess, and she will talk you through this, and we will get that, we will have it approved and changed over accordingly. So just, of course, keep us informed if you want to switch things back and forth.
Thank you,
Can I add just one more thing? I did forget to mention, it's in regards to the independent study COG 498499. This, of course, is the independent study project that you can apply for. That's usually towards the end of your year, maybe third or fourth year. All of the applications and information is on the COG website, uc.utoronto.ca/cognitive science.
Thank you, Kamala, and thank you, Jesse, and thank you all. I get one more time. It's very appreciated, very much appreciated that you've all been here, and I want to thank all the people who have attended. I think you're seeing how exciting and interesting and important cognitive science is. I happen to think it's the most important thing a human being can do, but I might be slightly biased in that opinion. But nevertheless, this is a great program. It's got a great, and I think deservedly so, reputation. We have wonderful people, and you've got to meet some of them. You've got to answer some of the questions. That doesn't mean the questions have to end. If you think of some further questions, you can contact me, Jesse, Kamala, or if you have questions for specific instructors, I know they'll be happy to receive your emails and answer. And so we've now come to the end of our time, and so I want to one final time welcome you all to this wonderful program, and I look forward to getting to know you more in person and across the next 2 or 3 years we have together. So thank you very much, one and all.